If you like what we do here over at AirtoAir Interview and would like to support us and help us grow, you can head over to our Patreon channel at patreon.com/AirtoAir Interview, where you can donate monthly. We have different tiers ranging from $1 per month right up to $25, with each tier offering different rewards. All the monthly donations greatly help us to continue creating these video and audio interviews, so please take a look and I thank you in advance. Enjoy. Then you moved on to the Jag. Was this the natural progression coming from the Ajit, or did you choose the Jag?
No, well, you didn't choose the Jag. You see, by the time I was finishing my fully ops and a 2 aircraft leader and my instrument rating on the Ajits and all, since we were on the Western types, the Hunters were there. We had one squadron of Hunters, and you had the Canberras which were on their way out. And then we had the Mirage 2000 coming in around the same time, in 84, 85, 86 and all. And the Jaguars had been there for about 6 or 7 years. So most of the people from the Ajits, they progressed either onto the Jaguars or onto the MiG-27s. They went in for the strike role, and what they did was when the Mirages came in, they just picked one or two people from each fleet to make the best of, combination, something like that. Unfortunately, there was an officer from our squadron who got selected onto the, to join the Mirages, which was the latest jet those days, fly-by-wire and the works in the Indian Air Force. So this officer met with a fatal accident in a night flying sortie, and they somehow after that nobody from Ajits went to Mirages. So you know how these decisions get taken at the headquarters or whatever it is.
Yeah. So what were your first thoughts on the Jaguar, your personal thoughts?
I was very impressed with this aircraft. The biggest jump that I could see happening was that the aircraft had reheat. There was no reheat, and the aircraft was capable of going supersonic from a transonic aircraft. And in terms of the ergonomics and the comfort and all, I think the British or the Western fleet stands apart from the Russian fleet. So it was seamless in terms of cockpit comfort, but in terms of switches, in terms of systems, in terms of the amount of groundwork that we had to do before every mission, it was a sea change from the Ajits, where you could, like I told you, just pull 4 switches up and push in 4 CVs and get airborne and things like that. So that was a big change, but I think good, for your professional growth and career and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And what version of the Jag did the Indians get? Was it basically just the RAF, or was there some changes for your Air Force?
Yeah, so the RAF Jaguars were the NAVAS Jaguars that the Indian Air Force got, the initial lot. That is, NAVAS stood for Navigation and Weapon Aiming Subsystem. But there were 2 squadrons, so the initial lot of aircraft that came in. The Indian Air Force thereafter did an improvement on the navigation system, and we had the Darren navigation system, which was better, ring laser gyros, the system was better. I joined the squadron which was converting from the Canberras, which were being phased out, to the Jaguars, which were being manufactured in India by HAL, which was the upgraded version of the Jaguars, called as the Darren Jaguar. So we were the first lot of 5 or 6 officers who were, forming the squadron. I was a youngster, of course, that time, and we would collect these aircraft, do their acceptance, flight testing, and all at HAL, and then get them over to the squadron. So I joined the Jaguar fleet with the latest version of the Jaguar, which was there in the Indian Air Force at that time. Subsequent to that, of course, it has undergone two more upgrades,
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about some of your flying training. What was it like? I'm guessing, was it a strike aircraft specifically, or was there any air-to-air role as well?
Yeah, so Jaguar was basically a strike aircraft. It was known as the deep penetration strike aircraft, and it could do all the roles, phenomenal amount of armament it could carry, very stable platform at low level, twin engines. It could perform fantastically, for the role that it was designed for. The Jaguar was designed basically as a strike aircraft, but it also had overwing missiles, which you could use to protect yourself in case you got into a fight. But our philosophy was always that you get down and you run away. But at low levels, after jettisoning your tanks, the aircraft was very maneuverable and excellent at controls. The only place where the Jaguar I felt lacked was because you had to do flying for a long time at low level and it was demanding,
Yes.
was it didn't have a autopilot, and which was sad because the first technology demonstrator of an autopilot was a Jaguar.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
when the Jaguars entered service, they were without autopilot.
No problem. So, Neil, as you know, the Jaguar had reheat. What was that first takeoff like for you, having that power?
I think the kick that the reheat gives you when you release brakes is like adrenaline rush, and when you see the markers whizzing past and getting airborne, that feeling cannot be described very easily. But very good, though. All the people from the MiG fleet and everyone else used to pull our legs to say that the Jaguar only got airborne because of the curvature of the earth, but they didn't know what. For a long time, I felt that I'm missing out on something because I had never flown a MiG class of aircraft. And the Indian Air Force essentially was all the MiG series, the three variants of the MiG-21, the MiG-23, the MiG-25, the MiG-27, the MiG-29, and the Mirages, of course, had come in. But when I did fly the MiG-21, much later in my career, when I got posted to a base which had a MiG-21 squadron as well, I realized that I have not missed much. So, I was very happy with the way things were. I mean, I've got nothing against the MiG-21. It's a fantastic machine. People swear by it. But in terms of, like I said, ergonomics, pilot comfort, flying, handling, you couldn't beat a Jaguar.
Yeah, so in your flying training, did you ever integrate with the MiGs, specifically the MiG-27, or were you all separate types and you just did your own thing?
No, we were not integrated with the MiG-27s. The Jaguars had their own role to play. We had our strikes, mapped out, and we had our targets, and we had everything. So we were not integrated to fly combined, formations. But over targets with time intervals, I suppose we would strike. The MiG-27 would strike, and that was there. But we did integrate with the Mirages as escorts for air defense as well as for EW.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned just before the cockpit, what was it like having a hood for the first time?
Yes, that was a game changer as well. The head-up display, gave you that option of not having to look inside at all through your flying. Definitely.
And did it feel like a bit more comfy, or because I've sat in a Jag and it's quite tight actually?
Then maybe you have to sit down inside an Ajit or a Nat to realize, how spacious the Jag was, because when you raised your legs up, your knees were on, touching the altimeter and the artificial horizon. It was the seat. It was like that, and very very tight cockpit on a Night or a Jeep. So
Yeah,
Jaguar
I'll have
was
to try
very
that next time, sitting in a Jeep.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's talk about some of the weapons or munitions the Jag could carry at that time in your flying career.
Yeah, so the Jaguars basically carried the runway denial weapons, the Durandal or the BAP 100. It carried the cluster bombs, and it carried the 1,000 pound bombs. It was only the later part when I was finishing my flying term, tenures and all, that we had the lightning pod and all, which got integrated onto the Jaguar for targeting the Israeli pod. But otherwise, they were conventional weapons.
And did you ever get to shoot the cannon?
Yes.
What was that like?
The front gun was very good. I mean, we regularly carried out armament flying, dropping bombs, firing guns, firing rockets over the range, because that was our bread and butter. And that is what we did all the time.
So Neil, you kind of talked about it before, but can you maybe just go into a bit more detail of the strengths and weaknesses of the Jaguar?
The strengths of the Jaguar: a very stable platform for the ground attack role. The amount of weapons that it could carry were phenomenal. The weakness of the Jaguar was the Jaguar didn't have a radar. It didn't have an autopilot, and the 804 engines, Mark 804 Adur engines, which were there with the Jaguar initially, over a period of time, we found them to be a bit underpowered for the aircraft, and then we came up with the 811 engines, in which the thrust was enhanced significantly. Otherwise, I think it's been more than 4 decades.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jaguar is still going pretty strong in the Indian Air Force after a number of upgrades.
Yeah. And obviously on your frontline squadron, did you always fly with tanks on, or did you ever fly clean?
We flew clean for air combat missions, because we did we did practice basic defensive maneuvering and all. And but most of the time we did fly with tanks on the Jaguar. Mm-hmm. And all the air test sorties also, of course, were done on a clean aircraft.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, obviously when you were clean, you went up against all the other types. Did the Jag have a chance at all when you were doing these kind of DACT missions?
Yes, we in the squadron had a picture of a Jag taking a shot at a MiG-29.
Brilliant.
And MiG-29, when it got acquired, was just for the purpose of air defense, and which was a big this achievement for to show a film with the MiG-29 and its crosshairs, of a Jaguar. It vanished, that is.
So, can you share some memorable stories from your time flying the Jaguar?
We did long range strikes at night, at dark night, flying at 300, 500 feet. Some of the missions that we carried out over the sea, going 150 miles, into the sea, low level, at night, without an autopilot, and probably at the back of your mind, knowing that if you were to punch out here, boy, I don't think anybody would be able to rescue you out of that place. Mm-hmm. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, things were different. Things have changed a lot now, in terms of SAR and all. So these were some memorable stories. And what I also found was that the most difficult part of the 24-hour cycle that a pilot has to fly is the time at 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning. And there were times when we did repetitive missions at those hours of the day. That means, you had a briefing at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. So it would be very difficult to go to sleep at 4 or 5 in the evening, and you couldn't sleep, and therefore you were not rested enough. And then you had to, get up and fly the mission and then fly another mission. And all Jaguar missions were long range and all were without autopilot and all required a lot of, preparation and concentration and having a wits about you. So, yes.
Interesting ones there. But just mention that obviously the long missions was the Indian Air Force Jag capable of air-to-air refueling at the time.
Yeah, so that's not the first. The Jaguars were capable of air-to-air refueling, but we did not have any tankers, and I was one of the first few guys. There were two officers who were sent to UK from the Jaguars to get trained on, air-to-air refueling. And thereafter, we had the VC-10 of the RAF come down to our Jaguar base, where it undertook training of the Indian Air Force pilots on air-to-air refueling. This was in 1997.
Right.
25. So before that, no pilot of the Indian Air Force ever did air-to-air refueling. And I did my first dual check with a RAF instructor on the Jaguar trainer, on which there was no probe. The and he told me, he said that I will consider my dual check to be successful only if you make a successful contact the first time.
Wow.
And when I went solo, I did it. So, and again, this is something that today has become the norm in the Indian Air Force. All pilots do air-to-air refueling. All pilots fly long-range missions. But in those days, flying a 2-hour mission, 2-hour or 2-hour 30 minutes mission, it was only the Jaguar pilots who were doing that in the Indian Air Force of the 70s, 80s and 90s.
Yeah, wow. Didn't know that, yeah. But, how many hours did you get on the Jag, Anil?
See, like I told you, my first stint in the Jaguars was when I, flew the Jaguars, which were the latest version of the Jaguars, which the Indian Air Force had manufactured. These were the Darren Jaguars. I did about 4 years in the squadron, flying about 800 hours, so about roughly 200 hours a year. And then I went for the QFI course, the instructor's course, and I did a stint training cadets and then did the staff college and came back. So now when I came back to the older version of the Jaguars, which were the original Navas British RAF Jaguars. So it was actually a step back into the Navas Jaguars, where I went back to the squadron as a flight commander. Really? So I've got about 1,600 hours on the Jaguars, so about 800 hours on each, the Navas and the Darren Jaguar.
That's very impressive. But one of your proudest moments, I'm guessing, is you became Air Vice Marshal. How did this come about and how did you feel about it?
Well, life takes you through strange twists and turns, and when I was flight commander of the Jaguar squadron, suddenly one day I, got a signal to say that I'm supposed to go abroad somewhere for some training. So I was wondering, those days, like I told you, the Indian Air Force was very insular. There were very few people going out, traveling for work and all. And then I had been selected to raise the first Harpy squadron of the Air Force. The Harpy, the Israeli anti-radar UAV. So I raised and commanded that unit. And then after that, I went back to the staff college as a instructor at Wellington DSSC, and did a stint in Air Headquarters, and I got selected for the High Command course. So I made it to Group Captain at that stage. And I never thought I'll make it to Air Commodore. That was the last thing on my mind, that will go this far or whatever it is. And the Air Commodore's rank came, and then of course, I got selected to do the RCDS, and after having commanded a base and having served in the Tri Services Command at Port Blair, I came to London for the RCDS course, and I was back again, and I picked up my rank as an AVM. So there it was. It felt good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a very impressive and enviable career you've had. But we're just going to wrap up with some personal questions, if you're happy with that, Anil.
Yes. Yes, of
So
course.
the first one is, do you have any hobbies?
Yeah, so in my younger days, I used play squash, but sometime in 2000, I had a bad road accident in which I shattered my ankle and all.
Right.
So the doctors told me it's better that you avoid
Yeah.
playing these games, and I wanted to get back into the cockpit, so I did avoid that. And I've been doing swimming, and then because the ankle broke, I picked up golf, and I've been playing golf. I love my game of golf. I do swimming. So that's more or less like a everyday routine. Alternate day I play golf and I do swim, and I love to read. I do some writing as well. So
What a brilliant life to have, just nice and relaxed. But this could be a difficult one or easy one for you, Anil. Favourite aircraft you've flown in your career?
Ajit,
Nope, that
without
was
doubt.
easy.
Without.
There you go, folks. So, is there an aircraft you would love to fly, either past or present?
Well, when I was in the Jaguar squadron, we found that the people who had joined the Mirages, they were like walking like Top Guns and all, above everybody else. So it was a dream, and I did manage to get a sortie in the back seat of a Mirage 2000, and I found that aircraft to be fabulous. It actually, the fly-by-wire, the aircraft, the handling, it was a fighter pilot's dream. Of course, given a choice, I would love to fly the Rafale, but I know I can't at this stage. So there you are. But I flew the Mirage 2000, and I did fly a sortie in the Su-30 also. But Mirage 2000, definitely class apart. No denying.
So, what do you think of the current Indian Air Force? Because there's some absolutely amazing types in the fleet.
I think the current Indian Air Force is up to the challenge. We have varied types of aircraft, but I suppose it is not out of choice, it is out of circumstances that the nation's been in. We've got the light combat aircraft, the Tejas. You'll have the Mark 1A coming in, and you have the AMCA also coming in soon in some time. And we have two squadrons of the Rafale. The only thing that we lack is the numbers. The squadron strength is dwindling because we need to phase out the older versions of the MiG-21s, and the replenishment isn't happening at the pace at which the phasing out is taking place.
Yeah. And the final question, what are you currently up to, and are you still involved in aviation today?
Yes, so I joined the Air Force think tank, the Center for Air Power Studies, last year in May last year. I retired in 2019 November, and March, April, the COVID hit. I was thinking of getting into a career into the civil aviation industry, but then the hit that the civil aviation industry took the world over, I realized, it was not a good, it was a no-go when you're going over the hill. And like I said, that, all good things happen for a reason. And I quite enjoy doing the job that I'm doing now at the Center for Air Power Studies as the Additional Director General. We've got about 25, 26 research scholars, including officers who are doing research on aerospace power, international security, strategy. I blog, I write on I blog as Candid Anil on Scroll Stack. Plus, I have been publishing articles in the journals and newspapers, magazines, whatever, and I quite enjoy doing that.
Yeah,
Writing
not
a little
relaxing
bit.
for you, is there, Neil? Just I'll go for you.
I suppose, my father would always say he never retired actually. And post retirement, he took up, he was into social work. He took up adoption of children in a big way, and he had helped about 250 orphan children find them
wow.
homes. And he would always tell me, the day I would stop working, I'm not going to live. And he continued working till the end, I mean,
wow, that's impressive. But
so I suppose as long as your limbs are, you're good, your mind is ticking,
exactly,
you must do whatever you can.
I totally agree with that. But Anil, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Mike, and it was a pleasure for me as well. And we hope to see you sometime again in the future in person or something. My son is in London, so maybe we'll, when I drop in there, we could catch up sometime.
Absolutely, sounds great.